Main man, made man here. Y'all know how I get down. We talking boxing, man. You know, I want to give my prayers, condolences to everybody who was affected in the Grenfell Tower fire. You know what I mean? That high rise that caught fire over in the UK, man. It's just tragic to see. We've heard stories about people jumping out of the windows trying to avoid the devastation, man. There were deaths involved, man. It's just a very, very sad thing. And my heartfelt prayers and condolences goes out to everybody who was affected by this. Not to mention, the UK is just getting over the thing that went down, the terrorist attack that went down in London, man. It's just like, my heart goes out to everybody affected by this tragedy, man. And two people that we know for sure that is affected by this tragedy are world-class fighters, James Degale and George Groves. The reason that they were affected because in this particular tower sat a boxing gym. It was also the same boxing gym that both James Degale and George Groves used as amateurs. And the name of this particular gym was the Dale Youth ABC, you know what I'm saying? Club, the Dale Youth ABC Club, you know what I'm saying? And the club has been there for a long time. I hear it has a lot of history. It was being upgraded, if you will. It was money put into it to sustain it, if you will. And it's just a tragic thing, man, to see this happen. And you see these two fighters are definitely affected by such. There are articles all over the internet today with these two boxers talking about that, man. But what brought me to these two boxes is that we know now currently James Degale is the 168-pound IBF world champion. And we got George Groves as the 168-pound WBA champion. And we do know back in 2011, George Groves and James Degale actually fought, in which George Groves defeated James Degale. Well, now here we are, 6 years later. And it turns out that these two fighters are now world champion fighters. However, making a fight between these two, there seems to be some obstacles right there, man. And given that these two have history, and given that the first fight ended in such close fashion, I mean, there could be arguments made for either man on whom won. Let's not forget George Groves pulled away with a very, very, very small edge in that decision, ladies and gentlemen. One judge scored it a draw, two judges scored it. They gave it to George Groves by like one round. I think it was like 114 to 113 or something like that, man. But fact is that George Groves basically got away with the victory by the skin of his chinny chin chin. You know what I mean? And now you fast forward and you go through the next few years. Well, these two men went on separate paths. And it turns out that James Degale, in my opinion, has had a much more successful professional career than, say, George Groves. Now, this goes into the argument of who is A side and who is B side, because according to James Degale, he's saying that George Groves is making himself out to be bigger than what he really is. And George Groves is asking for a 50-50 split if they decide to go to negotiations and make a fight. And at this point, James Degale just not interested in hearing that. He doesn't feel as though George Groves deserves a 50-50 split with him, man. You know what I'm saying? And not to mention George Groves cannot take the lead in any sort of negotiations. Now, since George Groves has won his world title, he has stated on numerous occasions that he ain't calling out nobody no more. He ain't chasing nobody no more. You know what I mean? He's been doing that for years. He's been chasing everybody for years as a challenger. And now that he is a world champion, they're going to have to chase him. You know what I mean? That's according to George Groves. Now, we all know, man, George Groves, it took him 4 times to get that world title. He lost twice to Carl Froch. He lost once to Badu Jack. And, that was 3 times. And then on the 4th occasion, in which he just defeated Shooting-Off a couple weeks ago, then he finally wins this world title. Well, guess what? James Degale has been a world title holder. When he defeated the Durrell brother, he's already had that title, and he has defended it now on a couple of occasions. Not to mention, it didn't take James Degale 3 or 4 times to win a world title. It just took him once, you know what I mean? Against a very formidable opponent, Now, don't get me wrong. George Groves fought a hell of a fight with Carl Froch in his first world title fight, But Carl Froch beat him the first and second time in front of 80,000, you know what I'm saying, at Wembley or whatnot. So, George Groves, his losses to Carl Froch back-to-back, his loss to Badu Jack, you know what I mean? To me, given that since both men, since meeting each other, have went on separate paths, and I think that James Degale has had much more success, not to mention his name is possibly much more bigger than, say, George Groves, even though neither man is widely known here in America. But the fact still remains is that James Degale has been a champion longer, possibly more well-known, beating better competition. So even though George Groves beat James Degale, I believe that James Degale should take the A-side role in a negotiation between a fight between him and George Groves. I think that's just the way it should play out. I understand how George Groves feel right now, man. He has a new trainer and Shane McGuigan, and Shane, though I wasn't overly impressed with George Groves in the shooting off fight, hey, it's McGuigan that got him the victory and got him his first world title, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't think George Groves looked stellar, and not to mention that shooting off is actually one of the more weaker champions, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know, man, but if a fight was to go down between James Degale and George Groves, I don't think it will be even so much possible for this particular year, maybe sometime in 2018, because according to James Degale, he's going to be out for the next few weeks with dealing with a shoulder surgery, and then after he does return back, he is looking to fight again this year, but he's looking to fight for the vacant WBC title that Badu Jack vacated when he decided to go up into 175, you know what I'm saying? So James Degale wants to fight for that vacant WBC title, maybe become a unified champion, and if he decides to then go into negotiations with George Groves, there should be like no talks on who's the A side of that fight, an undisputed champion as opposed to just a world champion, you know what I'm saying? So, but even so, even without that dynamic, James Degale is the A side, ladies and gentlemen. He is the A side. George Groves needs to fucking recognize that, man. But see, I always accused George Groves of being some lunchbox. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, the Carl Froch fights just really did something to George Groves. And mentally, he's not been there. George Groves has literally cried his way to 4 title shots, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Mentally, George Groves just, to me, seems off. You know what I mean? I said it right after his fight with Shooting Off in my post-fight video. I stated that, George Groves, he just seems detached somewhat mentally, man. All that he's been through over the years, all the criticism that he's received over the years, you know what I mean? From him crying to boxing boards, begging for, when he tried to get the Carl Froch rematch, the responses that the way he acted after his loss to Badu Jack, like, it made people, I don't know, man. George Groves just like, I don't know, man. But I tell you what, ain't nobody going above and beyond searching for no damn George Groves. And James Degale had a humongous fight here on American soil with Darrell, and he got and with Badu Jack. You know what I'm saying? He got the fucking jobs done. You know what I mean? And he did not lose to Badu Jack. For anybody who brings it up, he fought to a draw. Regardless how you may feel about the fight, that was the outcome. And it's not a loss. So it's no doubt about it in my mind. Anybody who feels as though George Groves should be a side because he did defeat James Degale, and I understand, please put that point of view in my comment section, man, because I'd be interested in going back and forth with you, man. But I'm just thinking that hands down, it should be James Degale as the A side whenever the negotiations start between him and George Groves. And that just should be, honestly, it should be widely accepted by everybody. I mean, that's just in my opinion. So whatever. To the next video, Main Man, Made Man. Don't forget to subscribe. Twitter, Made Man 511. Facebook, Made Man Boxing Forum. Google Plus, Main Man, Made Man. I mean, whenever these two do fight, man, there's going to be some fanfare about it, but they got to build it up. Do a little more trash talk, you know what I'm saying? Things like that. They do got to build it up. This will be possibly a very, very, very good undercard fight in the UK. But I think, honestly, a fight of this caliber, 2 world champions, they shouldn't be limited to an undercard because they're not super popular, man. These are 2 good boxers. This is definitely a main event fight. So hopefully, whichever promoters can get it together and put these 2 in the ring, man, and I hope they make it big because this fight has a lot of potential. Real talk. So to the next video, Main Man, Made Man. Don't forget to subscribe. Peace out.